40 years ago, we opened our doors with one mission in mind.
We'll be right back with the top 10 songs of 1983.
To sell quality American-made vehicles at a fair price.
You have arrived.
And we've loved every minute of the ride. Celebrating 40 years of Two Rivers Ford.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Lovely to have you guys here. Hope you are in a fantastic mood. Why wouldn't you be? Even though the weather's crap here, there's golf on the televisions starting about, like an hour and a half ago? First round teed off in the Masters. Tiger Woods officially underway even at this point. We'll keep an eye on the leaderboard for you throughout the course of today and tomorrow while we're on the air. You can jump in at any point if you want to. 615-737-1045. Lucas and I are with you until 1 o'clock today. So, while we keep an eye on everything that's going on here locally and pro days, top 30 visits, things like that going on, obviously there are other storylines in the NFL that are worth monitoring for a variety of different reasons, and one consistently this offseason, for better or worse, been the Ravens. Ravens won't get out of the news. Now, they have a pre-draft news conference yesterday. I think the Titans won. We got an email from Teresa Walker about this on, Monday, asking us what date worked best for us. Looks like ours is going to be April the 20th. So keep an eye out for that if you're somebody who's interested in hearing from Rand Carthon, probably Mike Vrabel. I think Mike speaks at these things prior to the draft, but I can't remember exactly. Either way, that press conference will come later. So the Ravens one was yesterday. And obviously the thing that continues to linger over the Ravens, much like the Packers, because last I checked, Aaron Rodgers still a Packers quarterback as opposed to the Jets. Lamar Jackson, his contract situation, he's been one of the biggest stories in the league, and the stalemate that they've been in, has engulfed basically everything and every media availability that they've done. So they come out yesterday, and because it's a pre-draft press conference, I guess somebody in their PR decided, we'll just take questions about the draft. Nothing on Lamar. We don't need to talk about Lamar at this time. But of course, if the Ravens can't figure out something with Lamar, or a deal gets done for Lamar, then in all likelihood, would that not put the Ravens in the quarterback draft immediately? So all this stuff has a domino effect, and you can't talk about anything about the roster construction without talking about Lamar. But they come out with this anyway, and the press conference starts. So apparently, at some point, and we don't know the name of the reporter, right, Lucas? Don't think so. There's an exchange with a reporter and the Ravens head of PR, because the reporter wants to ask a question about who's going to start for the Ravens at quarterback and what's the status on Lamar, because obviously these things are connected. And the exchange goes something like this.
With respect to this being about the draft and everything, just with the Lamar stuff that's going on.
Hey guys,
are you all looking at quarterbacks
Alex, if you can, this is about the draft. Just move off the Lamar questions. We're not going to answer one more questions today.
About the draft? Are you looking at quarterbacks differently because of the situations going on?
Yeah, I don't think we really are. I mean, we go into every draft trying to take any kind of bias out, any kind of need-based situation out of the draft equation.
Okay, so it's the PR person and the reporter going back and forth, and the PR person keep trying to slap him on the wrist. Stop it! Stop asking questions about Lamar Jackson. And it just they backed themselves into a corner on this, haven't they? Like, I know they have the leverage. I know they made the right move from a business standpoint to place the non-exclusive tag on Lamar and to let everybody else tell their quarterback that he's not worth what he thinks he's worth. Plus 2 first-round picks. We've been through this. We understand. But there's still a degree of public pressure because everything that goes on with them starts and ends, as it does with every football team, at the quarterback position. And until you have some kind of clarity on the quarterback position, and even until you have a decision on the quarterback position, you have to answer these questions. And you can have your big bad PR team, step up and try and balk at reporters or try and cut off reporters and be the middleman there and try and steer it back in the direction of, okay, well, what are you thinking at left tackle in this year's draft? What do you like about the offensive line group this year, John, huh? No, that's crap. Everybody who is involved with the Ravens, everybody who pays to go to Ravens games, just as you would want answers from any of your football teams, anybody who's involved with this club, they want to know what the hell's going on with the quarterback position before they decide how much they want to invest in their team, which in your team, by the way, which is completely fair. So we'll see what happens. And obviously the public pressure on them is going to continue to increase until they have a decision made. And right now, I mean, Lamar had a tweet in the middle of the night again, didn't he? I saw Josina Anderson of CBS Sports Now replying or responding to somebody about a tweet that Lamar had in the middle of the night. Apparently, it was a tweet that she put out about Lamar Jackson's situation late last night. I read her tweet wrong. Either way. So Lamar not recently on social media, but obviously that has been something that he's been inclined to use. And how much that gets the Ravens involved in this quarterback discussion. Titans, Ravens, Raiders, the obvious Texans, Colts at this point. Everybody who's looking around at this quarterback class, and there's still only 5 of them, really 5 of them, who you think can go on to be a starter at some level. Hendon Hooker, I don't know what his career is going to end up being, but he does seem to be regarded as somebody who can play for a franchise at some point at a starting level. We'll see how his career goes. And any of their careers go, right? There's no certainty. There's no such thing as certainty in the NFL draft. But it is ramping up the pressure and increasing the price point for a team like Arizona who's just sitting there at 3 looking around and be like, okay, we'll wait. They're in no hurry. They don't have to make a deal until this thing officially gets underway. They're under no pressure to do so. And they kind of hold the keys to the kingdom right now. If you're somebody who wants to sneak up and try and get involved with these 5 quarterbacks in some form or fashion, and probably just the 3 that remain after Stroud and Young are off the board. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. I think it's a pretty interesting case study for people around the league to watch, because the way that the Ravens have handled this, right, wrong, or indifferent, it seems like they've done what's in the best interest of the franchise, but it's created this hugely contentious situation. And you don't know what the ripple effects of that are going to be until you get this thing underway. You don't know how it's going to affect the locker room. I was watching NFL Live the other day, and it was a replay, or not a replay, but an episode that I'd had DVR'd from earlier in the month, and I wanted to go back and watch a portion of their discussion because it was specific to offensive line prospects. And they had Orlando Brown Jr., who at that point had not yet signed with the Cincinnati Bengals, but obviously former Kansas City Chief, now signed with the Bengals to be their left tackle, and started his career playing with Lamar Jackson. And they're asking Orlando Brown Jr. on the set of NFL Live all these different questions about Lamar because that's his former teammate. And what his response was, basically to paraphrase, is it's a super sensitive subject, but you know that Lamar Jackson, as soon as he gets out on the field, is going to be the kind of difference maker that he's been his entire career. He just kept saying, eight's going to get out there and get it done. Like that's the way that they think about these things. And while it's not a fatal error by Baltimore to kind of jack with the locker room vibes, it can definitely have a tangible effect on how your football team performs, even before we get the actual performance underway. We'll see what happens, and we'll come back to this a little later on. We'll talk about the first round and how much this could impact it with the quarterback decisions that a lot of these teams are going to have to make. As a matter of fact, why don't we do that coming up next? How many teams might need first-round QB? 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. We'll get into that coming up next. Welcome back to the show on this Thursday. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. How many teams are going to be involved with quarterbacks in the first round? There's really only 5 of them, theoretically, that you could make the case for. The drop-off is substantial between Hendon Hooker and whomever you consider QB 6 to be. Jake Hayner's getting a lot more love the more people I see study him. And I don't know where Stetson Bennett is going to fall. It sounds like he's borderline undrafted at this stage, and I know the arguments are going to be made for, national championship winning quarterback twice over, and he can have a statue to himself in front of the Georgia Bulldogs Stadium for all time, but that still doesn't mean that he's a good pro prospect at this stage. So quarterback draft going to get spicy here at the end of the month. And coming off this conversation around Lamar Jackson, the Ravens giving their pre-draft press conference yesterday, you heard Eric DeCosta kind of ask the question, okay, well, how does this impact? How does the Lamar Jackson situation impact how you view the quarterback class? He would go on to say that they would consider a quarterback in the first round. This was the Ravens GM speaking yesterday to media.
I mean, I'd have to say yes because we have quarterbacks in our top 31. So just based on that alone, simple math, I would have to say yes.
Okay. So they declined to answer questions about Lamar, but he would have to say yes if this situation would put them in position to consider a first-round quarterback. I mean, you could make the case for half the damn teams in the league at this point. Not everybody is going to roll forward with Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback, but could the Colts find a situation in which they might be? It's possible. People are going to go crazy for this 3rd overall pick. And Arizona obviously knows this. I don't know how much they have been trying to drum up their own market and how much it's just been basically created for themselves. But, I mean, the more that we hear from the Ravens and the more that 3rd pick is dangled in front of other teams, I mean, the Colts have to have a scenario where trading for Lamar Jackson is their contingency plan. Doesn't that just sound like something Jim Irsay would do? I know that they're past the point where you're considering veteran retread quarterbacks, but this is different. This is 25, going to be 26 years old. Yes, it costs substantial capital and financial resources to go and get him, but it's the kind of splashy move for a franchise quarterback that it feels like someone like Jim Irsay might want to make. Now, looking further down the list of teams in this draft, I mean, Lucas, I don't know how many you came up with, but I could make a case for all 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC South. I could make a case for the Las Vegas Raiders and Broncos at minimum if I wanted to, depending on how Denver feels about the Russell Wilson situation. I could make a case for the Cardinals, the Rams. I don't know what's happening with Trey Lance. It seems like the 49ers are out on that. They have 3 quarterbacks on their roster right now, and certainly Seattle could take one at 5. Every team in the NFC South we've talked about. Ravens potentially. They seem like the only team in the AFC North that doesn't have their quarterback futures, at least for the next 3 to 4 years, let's call it, kind of solidified. And I think the Jets are in the same position, but now New England makes this complicated with Bill Belichick shopping Mac Jones. So, I mean, it's more than half the teams in the league that you could make the case for.
I came up with 13 in the first round.
13 total?
13 of the 31 first-round picks that you could imagine making a push for a quarterback in the first round. But there's a difference between who we believe to be quarterback needy and whether or not those teams care to push for a quarterback in the first round, because there's nothing to indicate that Atlanta would do that. But you look at Atlanta's situation at quarterback with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, and logic would tell you, yeah, with a top 10 pick that they have, absolutely they should try and find a way. But it doesn't look like that's their priority.
And then, New England is such a weird one, because what is he going to do?
That's just if they trade Mac Jones.
No, I know. But, I mean, if he's considering that, is he telling people that, like, he's good with the idea of Bailey Zappi as the starting quarterback? Stranger things have happened, but who else is there?
What do you mean? If in what situation would the Patriots be signaling that Bailey Zappi is their guy?
Not necessarily their guy, but I mean, where New England is right now at 14, should they package 14 and Mac Jones in some form or fashion? Is that enough to get them up? I mean, in a place where they would draft, because it's not like that appeals to Arizona. Who's finding that as a good? Who's finding Mac Jones as a good value right now? Maybe a team like the Raiders, but the Raiders are still sitting there in a situation that doesn't really help the Patriots all that much. It's a complicated situation. Like, for them to be comfortable shopping Mac Jones has to say something about Bailey Zappi, doesn't it? Because the veteran options out there aren't better than he is, I guess. It's such a small sample size. I really don't know what to make of them, but I just think his decision-making is so questionable lately. That's not something you've ever been able to say about Bill Belichick. I think that's one of the most I think that's one of the most interesting, like, late-stage off-season wrinkles that you could add into this. Because I think it's very possible. I hardly think that gets leaked without some kind of traction being in favor of the Patriots trying to move him. And the idea that he's going to hear this and is already unhappy with his coaching situation, has already gone to ownership about it. How tenable can that be? I mean, Lucas, you can speak to this better than I can because I know you spend every show with him damn near. But, like, Blaine talks about this, right? You don't have to like your situation to play through it. And while I think there's still a degree of that applies to the NFL, these guys have a lot more leverage than it seems like players of a different generation would be. So if he's unhappy, he can try, especially a quarterback, can try and force his way out. I think the most interesting one on the board to me, I think it consistently, I come back to the Colts. Because you would think that they're in such a prime position to be able to capitalize on this, and yet still they're one pick away from actually being able to accomplish, it seems like, cleanly what they want to get done. And all of this can snowball so quickly. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the discussion. Seth, calling us from Alabama, is up next. Hey, Seth.
Hey, how's it going, Buck?
Good.
Hey, I'm talking about maybe trading up. We're not getting rid of Kevin Byard. That's Mayor Murfreesboro, and I went to MTSU. So I'm thinking about trading up and getting a left tackle. The prospect I'm looking at, he's about 198. He comes from Indiana University. You know that guy?
No, I have no idea who plays left tackle for Indiana. I'd be lying to you if I watched a single snap Indiana this year.
Oh, well, I'm talking on a show right now.
Do what?
You, Buck. I'm taking you. I'm drafting you.
Trading up to draft me. Okay. Good luck. I don't think I'd do much better. Man. Their offensive line situation seems like it's at least in decent shape. I mean, the Brewer thing, it sounds like that's going to be the competition at center. I don't know if that kind of keeps them from getting involved, but it does seem more and more like they're not necessarily going to be in on the tackles at the top of this draft with Dillard and NPF. I've seen a lot of different mocks posing the idea that they could take Darnell Wright from Tennessee. The more you talk to people and the more people who watch Darnell Wright and get more and more tape on him, more and more tape study done on him, he's got some of the best film out there against some of the highest level competition, not just against defenses like Georgia, but top prospects like Will Anderson. And by the way, completely and totally handled Will Anderson in that Alabama-Tennessee game. Creating competition at the right tackle spot, I guess more options is better than less, but you can't slide NPF on the inside. That's why I don't, that particular scenario, because I've seen it posed in a couple of different places. That particular scenario doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's not like Skoronski, right? where you put him at tackle, where he could play interior or play tackle. You put him at tackle, though, until I think he fails at that position, and then you see if you need to slide him inside. Darnell Wright, I don't think you benefit by trying him at left tackle the way that they did in college when he was so clearly and obviously better on the right side. William and Smyrna up next. Hey, William.
What's going on, guys? All right. So, massive New England fan here, and I'm going to talk more about this whole Mac Jones situation. I don't want to come on and just advertise nothing. I wrote a little article on this. That doesn't matter. So the whole thing about it, at first I bought all into it. Disappointed in Bill Belichick, of course, because as much as I love the guy, I'm just against this completely. And then I kind of sat back and I thought on it. It just doesn't make sense to me that they would move a guy like Mac Jones currently. It's like his value is at the lowest we're ever going to see it. They went out of the way because the report was that he had went out of his way and called the coaching staff in Alabama, a guy like Bill O'Brien, who they then went on to hire. So I feel like instead, maybe this year we'll see more of them trying to work with him because, I can understand why he's frustrated. They had a guy like Matt Patricia who's garbage at what he does. He's a great defensive guy, but my God, he's horrible at offensive play calling. He knows how to stop offenses on both sides of the ball. So that's kind of my whole thing. And then I feel like with the news coming out today that with the 14th news coming out today that they got Zay Flowers in Boston who touched down at about 6 a.m. and he's currently learning the playbook with Bill O'Brien. I just don't think the Patriots are done adding receivers yet. I feel like they're going to build for Mac Jones.
Appreciate the call, William. That's 60 seconds on the clock before you get the Oscars hook. So, his logic does make sense, right? They did bring Bill O'Brien. But Bill O'Brien, the Mac Jones connection, they cross paths for 6 weeks or something like that?
Yeah, a few seconds.
Yeah, they were not.
Didn't play for Bill O'Brien,
right?
Mac Jones.
And that's what prospects do on these visits. You remember how much crap Baker Mayfield got because I guess he had a visit with the Chargers and he basically told him, "Yeah, I'm not going to last to where you're picking. I'm not going to bother to learn your playbook before I go on this meeting." That's just generally what they do. They're testing retention. They're testing ability to diagnose, ability to play recognition, how they're going to incorporate them into the system. If they can recall what they're taught in their meetings, if they draw it up on the whiteboard, all these different things. So that's not uncommon for somebody like Zay Flowers. Have you been following along? Do you have Jalen Hyatt on Instagram?
I don't.
He's posting. He's one of the few that's posting literally every visit that he's on. He's been in Cleveland yesterday. I saw him in Dallas this morning, or maybe Cleveland the day before, in Dallas yesterday. He's just putting up random stories from different NFL facilities. He seems like he's been at a lot of them so far. A lot of interest in the top wide receiver in college football this year coming out of Tennessee. I mean, it would make sense to me to try and salvage Mac Jones while you've got the rookie deal. This is the whole thing for the Titans, man. This is why we kept talking about the idea of trading up makes so much sense for this team this year. Rookie quarterback, even if he's got to sit behind Tannehill for a season, he makes so much sense because you can build up everything around him. Now, New England's salary cap is a nightmare. They jettisoned Jonnu Smith this year. Was that a trade? Were they able to salvage money on that deal, or they didn't outright release Jonnu, did they? I think they traded him to Atlanta, but I can't remember exactly the terms that saw him end up back with Arthur Smith. Either way, they spent all kinds of money in free agency that cycle that didn't pan out, and are not necessarily worse for the wear because they're still working with Mac on a rookie deal, but that window is closing.
7th round pick for Jonnu.
Oh, God. They gave him $50 million.
Yeah.
Brutal. Jacob in Texas is next. We're getting callers all over the place. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, Buck. Hey, man. With us having to trade the farm and go up to number 3 with all the holes the team has, we're better off drafting JSN from Ohio State, considering Kyle Phillips, our slot receiver, couldn't stay healthy last year. Why not get the best slot receiver in the draft this year at 11?
Is he just a slot receiver?
Well, that's all he played in college, really.
Right.
But you got to consider who was around him. His teammates. That wide receiver room in Ohio State has just been absurd over the last 5-6 years.
I know, and he was the best of them.
And a lot of people are saying he was the best of them. But he's a guy that didn't show that in college, but that I think people believe can play outside in the NFL.
I mean, that was AJ. AJ was a big slot at Ole Miss. And so it's not hard to imagine a situation. And by the way, that versatility is great. You want guys who can play outside and inside. Gives you more options as far as your play designs are concerned. Now, listen, I like JSN a lot. If you stick and pick, if he's there, I don't know what the board's going to look like, but best player available is typically my perspective. And if that so happens to satisfy a need, then you're cooking. I would love a situation. Now, Kyle Phillips, by the way, I don't think that you should outright give up on Kyle Phillips, especially if JSN is going to be the solution there for a guy who's not available when JSN's biggest concern is, can he be available with the amount of soft tissue injuries that he has been working with throughout the course of his career? I don't think that should stop you from taking him because he's clearly a hugely talented player from a school that does nothing but produce hugely talented players at his position. He's one of the best that we've seen. And he may not be the best because Marvin Harrison Jr. is right around that corner, and everybody's drooling over him at the Ohio State Pro Day while they're understanding that they're there to watch quarterbacks, wide receivers, and offensive linemen and the like. Now, Jackson Smith and Jigba starting really one season, that I think is going to be the thing that anybody who would have reservations, like that's the only argument against him, right? Is the availability on a team that struggles with availability just in general. That I think would be the only true knock on or circumstance that you would look around and say, okay, can we really run the risk after having dealt with so many injuries already of a top draft choice, a skill position player, after Treylon Burks missed a ton of time in his rookie year? Can we really run the risk of this rookie not being available that way?
Yeah, that's probably a bigger concern for the Titans, right? Not that he played slot the whole time, that it's just a one-year sample size. Problem is that 1 year was unbelievable.
No, it's great. Like when you go back and watch that, that's what I'm saying. Like when you go back and watch that year where he's out there with the other two who ended up being first-round picks, like he's the best. He's the better of the three. Ultimately, I don't think you get anything done without the offensive line, so I'm still probably partial to taking an offensive lineman if you are going to stay at 11 and if that situation lends itself to you having the best of those options. I don't think Paris Johnson Jr. is a bad option. I don't think Peter Skoronski is a bad option by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think those guys – I think that the drop-off from Skoronski to the next interior offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance from Florida, I think it's pretty steep. And this is a team that still has Derrick Henry on the roster, so you're thinking about how can you help everything by a factor of 2 with the running game that desperately needs more help and more competency in front of it, and a passing game that needs to keep its quarterback upright.
K. Oldham on YouTube says, just grab Cedric Tillman in the second round. Got good size, good hands. His desire is his greatest attribute.
He's their type.
He is their type.
And by the way, like that toughness element of it, him coming back and playing, finishing out the season, I know a lot of people would say, well, do better to protect yourself. Your body is your value at this point. But you know who loves that bleep? Football guys.
And he wasn't an injury-plagued guy throughout his time at Tennessee. It was an ankle sprain. That's all it was. And he tried to come back and play through. It was never 100%. He did not play in the bowl game.
Right. And I think the bowl games are like bowl games are like Switzerland. Bowl games are neutral territory as far as, like, does it actually impact your draft status if you chose to play through it or not? I think him coming back and finishing the remainder of the regular season, though, I think a lot of people respect that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people respect that kind of stuff from football players. That toughness is hard to come by.
It'll be interesting to see where he lands. We talked about Lance Zierlein's mock draft yesterday. He has Tillman going with the last pick of the first round. He also has Jalen Hyatt going in the first round. Can you tell me the last time there was an NFL draft where 2 Tennessee Volunteers were taken in the first round?
I honestly don't think I could.
Just give it a crack. Throw a year out there. Throw a year.
2 first-round Vols wide receivers?
No, not receivers, just Vols.
Oh, first-round Vols. What year did Reggie White get drafted?
Oh, guys, what? You're going back decades?
I
My
mean,
goodness.
I don't know, man.
My goodness. 2010. 2010. Eric Berry and then Dan Williams.
Dan Williams, a defensive tackle?
Yes, Dan Williams did not
For the
quite.
Raiders?
I believe the Cardinals drafted him.
Cardinals.
Yeah,
okay.
but he obviously did not quite pan out.
All right, you'll forgive me if I don't remember the storied NFL career of Dan Williams.
No, he was the 26th pick in that draft. Eric Berry was the number 5 pick in that draft.
Eric Berry was a stud.
But you're getting close to that. I mean, if Hendon Hooker goes in the first round and Jalen Hyatt does, that seems like the most likely scenario.
I think Darnell Wright's going to be a first-round pick.
And Darnell Wright, that's right. Can you tell me the last time 3 Tennessee players were taken in the first round?
Never.
2002, and it's a good one.
Okay, who you got?
John Henderson, 9th overall pick to the Jags.
Now, which Hall of Fame is John Henderson?
About to be in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. They announced it on the morning show last week. Dante Stallworth, 13th overall pick, receiver to the Saints. And Albert Hainsworth, 15th overall pick to the Titans. 3 in the top 15 that year, 02.
The only segment that I know Lucas cares about today is the Masters Food segment. Lucas is going to put together a board of different prices on Masters Food items, and we're going to try to put it together for $10 or less coming up next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson from 104.5 The Zone's Morning Show. Hey, it's Kayla Anderson from 104.5 The Zone's Morning Show. Ramon, Kayla, and Will, and I am a proud participant in this year's Visionaries of the Year campaign for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and it is my privilege to be sitting here with Olivia. She is going through this battle right now at 10 years old. I know it has not been easy for you. You've been going through treatments and continue to. Why is it so very important for people to donate?
So we can get easier treatment options, and it will help the research of leukemia and lymphoma.
Yeah, and this is such a strong young lady, and every little bit will help. Like she said, the Dare to Dream campaign for safer treatments. This is not a disease that discriminates. It hits all ages. We've seen athletes that are dealing with that right now as we speak, but Olivia right here, she's going to win this battle, and we are here to help. So you can easily donate. Every dollar counts. Just click on that QR code at the top of Zone TV. You can just also go to 1045thezone.com.
That's the only time I've seen Lucas excited about anything we had planned on the show today. We're going to talk about the Masters, but we're going to talk about the Masters in terms of food. What's the leaderboard situation looking like right now, buddy? What do we have as far as the first round of the Masters is concerned?
Cam Young, Victor Hovland tied at the top in the early goings, both of them at 3 under. Hovland through 6, Young through 4, and then it gets jumbled up. Like 8 guys tied at 2 under after that. Obviously still really early down in Augusta. So things will start to heat up at some point soon. But I am always fascinated by the menu at the Masters, personally.
Because you're a food guy.
Yeah, I mean, when did they... Because a big deal is made of the prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like $1.50 for this sandwich, $2 for mixed fruit or whatever. When did they set these prices, I wonder? And I love that they haven't budged, and I know that that's like their thing. But I want to know what year the Masters menu was set in stone and the prices were decided and how long that has been the case.
All right, so I have an article from MarketWatch.com. I do not know how reputable a source MarketWatch.com is, but it's the closest thing that I could find. $1.50 for a sandwich at the Masters. Why food prices at the golf tournament are so low. Okay. It's about as cheap as any restaurant anywhere. Famous pimento cheese sandwich is only $1.50. In fact,
cheaper than any restaurant.
No food item costs more than $3 on this Masters menu. A $6 white wine is the most expensive item on the menu, and a beer is only $5. By comparison, the average NFL stadium charges roughly $10 for a 16-ounce beer. I believe this might be a dated article because I think...
Yeah, $10 seems too low.
Yeah, I was about to say, $10 sounds low. I haven't bought a beer at a game in a long time, but $10 strikes me as not...
No, you're in the 12, 13 range most of the time,
right?
For a 16-ounce beer.
I mean, I bought a beer at a soccer game recently. I haven't... I don't know how much of those like Bud Lights or Coors Lights that they have like right in front of the stairs before you go to your various sections. Like I don't think those are $10, are they?
No, they got to be more than that.
I think anyway.
But
let's not get bogged down. So inflation. Why am I paying $10.50 for eggs and $1.50 for a pimento cheese sandwich?
Let's talk about inflation
at the Masters. Yes, let us with all of our economic expertise dive into one of the country's biggest burdens right now.
Agent S. on YouTube says a beer at SoFi Stadium is $18, which is so offensive to me.
For the vast majority of businesses, we assume business owners are profit maximizers, which means they are in the business of squeezing every last dollar they can out of their customers, says Victor Matheson, economics professor at the College of Holy Cross. In sports, we don't necessarily see that. Well, he's a liar because in sports we do see people squeeze.
Yeah, you kidding?
What? I no longer trust MarketWatch.com. $10 is too low, and this person is lying to me that sports as a business is not trying to squeeze every last dollar out of its customers. So I don't feel like I'm going to get reliable information on this. I do know that Augusta National can afford to serve $1.50 pimento cheese sandwiches, but it does surprise me that that is the place where they're willing to kind of take it on the chin a little bit, to sell it for face value, for lack of a better term. Black market pimento cheese sandwiches. So what are you most excited to talk about the food? Are you just generally fascinated with the menu, or is there something specifically?
The latter. But what do you think is the most expensive item? You said $3, the most expensive food item on the menu. What do you think that is?
$3. I mean, it's got to be some kind. Is it like a cheeseburger?
No burgers. No burgers on the Masters menu.
Okay.
I don't believe it's.
I don't know what the Masters menu looks like. The only I've never been to Augusta National. I had a friend go and bring me back a polo because you can only buy apparel from the Masters at Augusta National.
So the most expensive item, $3 for a barbecue sandwich.
Okay.
$3 for a chicken salad sandwich. The same goes for the Masters Club. You mentioned the pimento cheese sandwich, $1.50. Egg salad sandwich is $1.50. And the most intriguing of all, I think, is the Georgia peach ice cream sandwich. Georgia peach ice
cream sandwich. Oh,
yes.
My God.
It's Georgia peach ice cream sandwiched in by 2 sugar cookies, $2.50.
Yikes.
It sounds amazing. I think
that is not on the diet plan.
The pimento cheese, I think I could crush. I think I would just go up there and buy like 10 pimento cheese sandwiches and just absolutely obliterate them.
I don't know that I've just had a pimento cheese sandwich. Like I've had pimento cheese on like a burger or something like that, or pimento cheese on something else. What is it? Just like a cheese sandwich, the pimento cheese sandwich, or is there some kind of protein on it?
No, pimento cheese. It's just cheese mixed with like peppers, and it's just big, delicious, spicy cheese mixture. And you just put it between bread. It can be dip. It can be. You can use it as like a condiment.
I need a little protein there.
But
otherwise, it's just like eating a macaroni and cheese sandwich.
Well, that's great. You got $20 in your pocket. Get 10 pimento cheese sandwiches. That's $15 right there. And then throw in a chicken salad sandwich or something, another $3. And you got $2 left over, and you can get yourself a blueberry muffin for $1.50.
It's just the way that you fantasize about food costing $1.50, like actual sandwiches instead of a Snickers bar costing $1.50 in your life. The fact that that takes up this much of your bandwidth concerns me.
I mean, it sticks out to me more than anything. I just want to know when these prices were set in stone. That's all I want to know.
I'm not getting it from MarketWatch.com at this point. So if anybody comes up with a more reliable source that's not going to lie to me the way that this article did.
Andrew tweets at us and says, "Thanks, guys. I'm now starving at 10:53 a.m." Does this make up for us talking about dead rat smells around lunchtime yesterday, where we had people tweet at us saying they threw away their lunch?
Shall we go ahead and ruin everybody's appetite? What's the latest on Benji the dead rat living inside your wall? Well, I guess not living.
Broken me. I'm suffering full-blown Stockholm syndrome now.
Does it still smell?
Oh, yeah. It's really bad. It's really, really bad.
Do you watch Succession?
No.
No. It's from a previous season, but one of the characters is trying to find a place to rent in New York City, which is of course god awful as far as the prices. And one of the Roys, the rich family that's there to, I think, is modeled off Rupert Murdoch and his kids who own Fox. Fox is as a media company. One of the kids just goes, "Have you considered a hotel? Just living in a hotel."
It doesn't sound bad, but Benji just owns me now. I am Benji's servant. I'm just a pawn in his game.
The servant to the dead rat living inside your wall. I want more. I think every time we do a Masters update, we should also do a Benji update. Like, I think we should have Blue call in as a correspondent. Like, I think we should find ways to at least to turn your suffering into content. Because, I mean, I don't want to laugh at you. God forbid anything happen to anybody like this. I would not wish this on anybody.
It's
a dead thing.
Actually awful. It's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. Mr. G on YouTube says, "Give it a few weeks." Lucas, don't tell me to give it a few weeks. Last night I came home too, and you come home expecting to just be punched in the face, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad. It's dissipating a little bit, but maybe it was just the rain or something masking the smell.
Rain is not going to help.
But because this morning it was back with a vengeance.
Yesterday was like muggy too. It's only going to get hotter. Maybe we've ruined Andrew's appetite at this point. More Benji the Rat updates next.
It is 11:02. Good morning from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica, starting with the Seymour Putters Masters update. Tied at the top of the leaderboard at the moment, Victor Hovland and Cam Young at 3 under. Hovland through 7 holes, Young through 5. 5 guys tied for second at 2 under, including Sergio Garcia and Xander Schauffele. Tiger Watch continues. He is 3 over through the first 6 holes of the 2023 Masters. Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill announced he will retire from the NFL when his contract is up with the Miami Dolphins in an appearance on 810 WHB in Kansas City. That will be after the 2025 NFL season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on this Thursday. Lovely to have you guys here, whether you're hanging out with us on the radio, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. That's Zone TV if you want to kick it in the studio with us or wherever it is you're consuming. We're happy to have you guys here today. Jump in at any point, 615-737-1045. That's the number. If you would like to, wide receivers. Big point of discussion here locally. Titans doing nothing other than signing Nick Westbrook-Akina to a 1-year deal to bolster the depth of their receiving core. Tyreek Hill is in the news, and we're going to talk about a couple of different wide receiver situations that are curious to me, but as the Titans continue to try and figure out what makes the most sense, the closer we get to the draft, the more it feels like, yeah, they're probably going to do this thing in the draft and then see what happens in the post-draft free agency with what is left available, if they are seeking any additional help. I still think they need a wide receiver. I still think they need a tight end, despite they have Chig and now Trayvon Wesco on the roster as their inline blocking tight end. They still need pass catchers, skill position players. This is a group that is in desperate need of an upgrade. Now, that was something that the Miami Dolphins needed to pair with Jalen Waddle when they did that deal for Tyreek Hill last offseason. You saw a lot of big named wide receivers moved, and you saw Tyreek Hill absolutely cash in with Miami after Kansas City was like, we can't really afford to pay you and a $500 million quarterback contract, so we're going to bank on being able to turn Mecole Hardman into a poor man's Tyreek and let you go on down to South Florida. So it's worked out pretty well, at least in the first season. You understand that the quarterbacks' concussion situations, both of them, not just Tua, but Teddy Bridgewater, a lot of brain scrambling happening, unfortunately, for Miami quarterbacks last year that derailed their very hot start and one of the best offenses in football. And we know how desperately this team needs a game-changing playmaker in some form or fashion. If it's going to be Derek, then it needs to be Derek more consistently. If it's going to be Treylon Burks, he needs to be more available. If it's going to be somebody not on the roster, well, they need to figure that out sooner rather than later. And for Tyreek Hill, he seems to already have his eyes on a particular kind of finish line. He did a podcast appearance. It's called Totally Offensive, the podcast name. Apparently, it's hosted by a couple of his former Chiefs teammates. And he was asked a question about his future. This was Tyreek Hill speaking on the Totally Offensive podcast.
So you're going to, this is what, year 8 for you?
Year 8, baby.
Year 8. How many more years do you think you can play? Or do you want to play?
I'm going for 10, man. I'm gonna finish out this contract with the Dolphins, man, and then I'm gonna call it quits. You know, I wanna go into the business side. You know,
you want to be in the coaching too, right?
Yeah, but not for long though. I want to do so many things in my life, bro.
You want to come back and help us coach me and Gary high school football?
Can I bring my boys?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I will bring the little cheetahs, the little soul runners.
So hey, listen. So now we're making a good,
buddy.
strong push for a really, really well coached team.
We got to travel the world though, bro.
Soul Runner, can Soul Runner sponsor us?
Yeah.
So what's your number one after football business idea or kind of goal after football?
So I really want to get into like the gaming space. Like I really want to get huge in that, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm using my platform, creating a gaming team. which isn't launched yet. It should launch by the end of this month.
So he's already thinking about life beyond football. Now, if you're Miami fans, 10 years in the league, I don't know why it doesn't feel to me like Tyreek Hill hasn't been around that long, but that makes sense with the timeline. He's been a big part of the NFL for quite some time, and to put a nice, round, neat number on it, when you've made the kind of money that he has, then yeah, you can afford to walk away, provided that you've handled your finances correctly and that you have future plans to continue to do so. The e-gaming space is hugely profitable. I was just in a meeting the other day, we were talking about this. How many different athletes and people in the entertainment space are starting or buying esports teams for paid competition and tournaments? It's pretty crazy to realize that market space. But either way, Miami's wide receiver solution has a shelf life. And at some point, Tyreek Hill, whenever that happens, is going to stop being faster than every other fast football player out on the field. So it's fair to expect a 10-year point might be a good breaking point for these two to part ways. But as the Titans try and figure out a wide receiver solution, we talked about the idea of them being involved in one of these offseason trades and how realistic that was, seemingly less and less realistic every day, especially with the amount of money that they currently have to spend. Precious little resources, even if you were to structure the cap hit, because you would have to give one of these players another contract, a new contract on the other side. You could structure the cap hit in a friendly way, but even then, it would be difficult for you to have any maneuverability whatsoever. And then there's the idea that's still out there, which is the lingering presence of DeAndre Hopkins in this marketplace. I saw a couple of different reports and aggregations on the idea that if Arizona cannot trade DeAndre Hopkins, that they had planned to release him just because the money is a lot. He's going to be in his 30s. He still appears to be a productive football player, but again, the soft tissue injuries, the way that we talk about with a lot of guys once they start to get up there, those are always not at the forefront, but they're definitely in the back of your head. So Arizona's looking to get out from under what they consider a depreciating asset. And I think that would be a fascinating possibility to explore. Now, I don't know what DeAndre Hopkins' contract demands would be if he were to get released from the Cardinals this offseason. And I don't know that there's anything on the roster that would give you the financial flexibility to pursue a guy like DeAndre Hopkins if moving on from any of those players, really any of the top three, and if you wanted to put Danico Autry in there, 4, where cap relief is concerned. I don't know that moving on from any of these 4 players to acquire DeAndre Hopkins would make a ton of sense, and I would not feel comfortable about giving him a long-term deal. That's probably something that he's going to seek, given that he's starting to get up there in age. But I would still take a wide receiver at 11 if one was there, and I'd add DeAndre Hopkins if he was available. That would make me feel so much better about what the Titans have at the skill position players. It would make me feel so much better about the different options that they have out on display, and it would be, I think, a cost-effective solution with a high-end ceiling, even as the idea of bringing in one of these veteran wide receivers closer to the end of their career than the beginning of it kind of makes your chest tight if you're a Titans fan. You've seen a lot of these different things before. Now, again, there's so many different factors that you have to consider, but the idea of Hopkins makes a lot of sense for this team and for the Ravens, 2 teams who you consistently talk about as being wide receiver needy. But, of course, Arizona has to let him go for nothing, and I know they're fighting desperately against doing that at this point. I want to get into a discussion about college football because now that spring ball is underway just about everywhere. I think everywhere has started at least spring practices and spring games coming up later in this month and into May. There was a really cool article on ESPN.com done by Heather Dinich about 4 programs in the Power 5 that have a legitimate chance of taking Georgia off the mountaintop. 2-time national champion winners at this point under Kirby Smart, and looking like they're a machine the size and the strength that peak Alabama seemed to offer. Now, maybe you can't replicate peak Alabama because there was a time where Alabama was getting all of the players and that it was not as evenly distributed or close to evenly distributed as it is now. But Georgia's created a machine. 4 teams are being posed as being capable of knocking them off in 2023, and the University of Tennessee is one of them. We're going to give you the explanation of that coming up next. Have you ever gotten a text message from a random number that was very like either personal message or picture, and you had no idea who the person was? I've heard two different stories like this. Well, one just happened to me. I'm put in a group text with what appears to be a group of nurses from Deaconess Hospital in Evansville, Indiana. There's like 6 different group shots that I've just been sent, and do I respond? Do I say wrong number?
No, you write it out. And
you just ignore it?
No. Like you chime in as though you are part of this. Like what's happening? What's the conversation right now?
There is no conversation. It's literally just 6 pictures with no context of a group of, they appear to be, I don't want to say hospital workers because they're not they've got like a Deaconess pullover on. So like this is something to do with Deaconess Hospital in Evansville, Indiana. It's a group picture of 8 women. 8 women gathered together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So it's just a picture that was shared. So, since you have that area code, your number somehow got erroneously lumped in there?
Well, let's not assume for people trying to figure out my phone number that 812 is in my phone number. That would not be ideal.
Well, you just said that. I'm sure most people don't know off the top of their head what Evansville, Indiana's area code is. But, yes, you play along. You say, great picture, ladies, or loved hanging with y'all.
I was talking to somebody yesterday to tell me a story about a friend of theirs had hooked up with somebody and had gotten the number and was texting back and forth with the person that they thought to be the person that they had hooked up with. And it was, in fact, not the person. They carried on a 2-week conversation with this individual.
It was their spouse.
It was no. It was actually a person of the opposite sex that they were texting, trying to take them out on a date for 2 weeks, and not understanding why they weren't making any headway. It was a very, very confusing situation.
But no, you play along.
I've just gotten 5 more photos sent to this group. I'm concerned now.
You play along until you get caught.
No, I don't want to get caught. Get caught doing what?
Like, have you ever seen? It was like a viral internet moment a while back of a big group text of a bunch of soccer moms, and somebody like got erroneously lumped into it, just a wrong number got included in the group text, and they were just like, "My son is better than all of your sons," and it sent a frenzy. Like that's what you need to do. You need to just throw a grenade into this work dynamic of these ladies that work at this hospital.
No.
Like fine, yeah. I mean,
they all look so nice.
You need to start having some fun with this.
Nothing sounds like a crappier thing to do.
You need to reply, be like, "LOL, Cindy, your bags under your eyes are showing," or something. Just send it like into a spiral.
No, one of them's in a wheelchair. I don't want to do this. You're gonna get me in legitimate trouble because I feel like you could figure out what people's phone numbers are now. There's got to be some app for that, which is deeply concerning in today's society. But yeah, this is interesting. I don't know. I'm having people now tweet me things to say. Slay Queens is something that has been submitted.
How do you do, fellow kids? Yeah.
Hello,
Slay Queens.
Listen. Advice on how to handle this, 615-737-1045. It was disorienting. We're still going to talk college football here.
Elliot says, you got to respond with, "Oh my gosh, I look so fat. Delete it now."
I'm down for the game, but I don't want to get caught. This seems like a bad idea. So if anybody has anybody at the Deaconess Hospital that is taking group pictures and being sent erroneously, that's not the right use of that word, but just sent around. This can happen to people. Jason in Nashville has group text advice. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Buck, I was just thinking as you look at this picture, you could be like, it's funny looking at this picture, you all look happy. No one would ever know that you can't stand each other when you're not around each other.
No, why is it, Jason, shame on you. Why is the default to just come out here and try and cause division and derision with this group of women who look to be perfectly happy in their work setting and trying to take a nice group photo? Why? What's wrong with you people? I'm looking at you specifically. You people behind the glass. You back there plotting. Sip your coffee. Randy in Missouri is next. Hey, Randy.
Buck, how are you?
Good, buddy.
Hey, I just wanted to bring up something with Hendon Hooker that I haven't really heard anyone talk about. As many pieces as the Titans have holes for, how come nobody's talking about trading back into the first, getting Hendon Hooker with a later first-round pick, and then possibly getting Jalen Hyatt with a second-round pick to do what the Bengals did, pairing up Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase? I'll hang up and listen to your response.
Thanks for the call, Randy. I don't think – I mean, we don't know what they've discussed, right? Like, we can't speak to all the different scenarios that they've discussed because it's entirely possible that they've explored the idea of what it would be to trade back regardless of who they might be trading draft capital, right? I think the thing that I tend to notice, and I really need to do some legwork on this beyond just kind of having paid attention to it over the course of the last couple of years, the way that teams talk about trading back, not necessarily to target a player, but because they feel that maybe a certain player or group of players that they have clumped together in how they stack these things on their respective draft boards, not necessarily trading back for an individual, but being comfortable trading back because there's a cluster of individuals that you would be comfortable taking. Now, I don't know what the Titans think about Hendon Hooker. I know they had him in for a top 30 visit, and I hadn't heard anything positively or negatively come out of that interaction. I have not seen Jalen Hyatt put up on his story that he's been to the Tennessee Titans, though he seems to have been everywhere else. The last I saw was Vegas, Dallas, and Cleveland. But it sounds like Jalen Hyatt's a first-round pick. And we've all of a sudden, in the same way that Hendon Hooker's draft stock has just gone up because I think a lot of teams have determined, oh, bleep, we kind of need a quarterback worse than we might have thought we needed a quarterback. I think the wide receivers, people are going to look around at some point. Somebody's going to start this run. And whether that's outside of the top 10, whether that's outside of the top 15, whatever that looks like for the wide receivers, I think that Jalen Hyatt would be one of the first names called once a run like that begins. But it's interesting. All right, college football. The way that Georgia kind of lords over the sport right now is the taste that was left in my mouth at the end of the season. I thought that college football had one of its most compelling seasons that I can remember in quite some time, both because Alabama was not this dominant, overwhelming force. Georgia was, but there was a couple of moments when they got scared, even though they finished 15-0. Missouri comes to mind in particular, a game that they could have easily lost, but found ways to gut it out at the end against an inferior opponent. But the thing that is in the back of my head that I'll remember that season as is 65-7, is that the result at the end of the year was an absolute ass-kicking by Georgia. TCU looking around completely confused, not making any adjustments, and Nick Saban lobbying on every platform humanly possible that they should have been in the college football playoff because, look. And he was probably right. Now, heading into 2023.
No, he wasn't.
What? That they were one of the four best teams in the country?
Alabama did not deserve to get into the college football playoff. Being one of the four best teams in the country and deserving to be in the college football playoff are two very, very, very different things.
I know.
But a conversation for another day.
But I'd rather have the best four teams in the country, not the most deserving.
Well, then win your games.
The most deserving looks like TCU, and I don't want to watch that again. I'm good. Anyway, TCU is not going to threaten Georgia next year, nor into eternity, despite Coach Mack and his love of frogs. But there are four programs being posed here as legitimate threats to the Georgia Bulldogs and the dominance that they seem to now have over the sport. Alabama is the easiest case to make because the only way that they would face each other this year is in the SEC championship game, if that were to come about, and that would assume that both had won their respective divisions. Now, with Alabama having such little clarity at the quarterback position, you could say that Alabama is not like definitively the biggest threat to Georgia this year until we have a better idea of what's going to be under center for them and how they're going to manage what that's going to look like under a new offensive coordinator and how Kevin Steele, I guess, handles a return to work under Nick Saban and what adjustments are made as a result. Because Alabama, I think, was not the most talented team in the field last year on a regular basis, and that's a new experience for a lot of us. Now, the impact of that wouldn't be crazy because Nick Saban is 4-1 against Kirby Smart, and so that would seem almost a return to normalcy, even though the new normal, I think, looks like Georgia. The other three programs that I think make a more compelling case, or rather the other three programs that make a compelling case, I think in order, Ohio State, Tennessee, and as Heather Dinich writes here in her article on ESPN+, LSU, she believes, has a legitimate chance to be able to handle Georgia, even though Georgia won by 20 in the SEC championship game and put up 50 on LSU's defense.
So those are the teams she includes: LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee. Those are her four that can knock Georgia off its perch.
Yes.
Now, the conversation of knocking Georgia out of a national championship, essentially preventing them from a three-peat, or beating them head-to-head are two very, very different conversations in my mind.
Right.
Because Tennessee is the most likely team to beat Georgia head-to-head. They are not the most likely team to take a national championship from Georgia next season.
Well, like you said, now none of these circumstances are created equal, right? Because as I said, Alabama does not play Georgia in the regular season. They would have to meet in the SEC championship game. Tennessee obviously does. LSU's schedule.
No, Georgia does not play. I say Tennessee is the most likely team to play Georgia head-to-head because they are the only team
there
on Georgia's schedule. And they are the most difficult element of Georgia's schedule. Have you seen Georgia's 2023 regular season schedule?
Is it gross? Is it going to piss me off?
It is, but it's not entirely Georgia's fault. But here's how it starts. At home against Tennessee Martin, at home against Ball State, at home against South Carolina, at home against UAB, the first four games. They're on the road at Auburn. They're at home against Kentucky. They're on the road at Vanderbilt, on the road at Florida, at home against Missouri, and then at home against Ole Miss, their rotational SEC West opponent, and then on the road at Neyland Stadium, and then finishing out at Georgia Tech. So you're looking at playing, obviously, the entirety of the SEC East, your fixed SEC West opponent in Auburn, first year under Hugh Freeze, and then you take on Ole Miss at home as your other SEC West opponent. Your toughest non-conference opponent is Georgia Tech. Now, I say that's not entirely Georgia's fault because they had a home-and-home scheduled with Oklahoma for 2023 and 24. Georgia was supposed to play Oklahoma this year.
That's right.
And the SEC stepped in and said, well, they're about to be in the conference. We can't do this. So at the last minute, Georgia reschedules the Oklahoma game and Ball State steps in.
No, I think that's fair. That's fair context to put it in. Now, the case for Tennessee looks like this. Again, ESPN Plus is where Heather Dinich has this article. The Vols will have home field advantage on November 18th. This time, they have to be ready for the spotlight with Georgia's physical defense. Hendon Hooker was sacked 6 times last year. The crowd noise seemed to contribute. We all recall, because I think we had Dobbs in that week, and he was critical of the environment at Georgia's stadium.
Sanford Stadium?
Yes, I almost called it. I think, yeah.
We're going to do college football trivia with you in the summer.
No, why?
And we're gonna make you name. You better start studying. We're going to make
Jordan
you name.
Hare. Jordan Hare is what I was trying to avoid, which is Auburn.
That's Auburn. Hey, good job. See, we're going to make you name SEC stadiums. We're going to make you assign teams to what conferences they're in, maybe what division they're in. I can't wait.
The only one I have to know is the only ones I really have to know, the SEC and the Big Ten.
I'm going to put up
everything else I don't care about.
I'm going to put up the Pate signal and get Josh back in here.
Are we replacing the Tennessee geography bee with that? Because I would hate that.
Yes. No, you wouldn't. That is what we're going to replace it with. We've exhausted the Tennessee geography bee. We've gone over every single tough to pronounce Tennessee town. So when Pate gets done storm chasing, we'll get him back in here and do some college football trivia.
He makes me nervous with this stuff.
Yeah, it's legit.
What is he out here trying to replicate Twister for? Like, I want our friend to be safe, and he's out here running down tornadoes in the middle of Arkansas. Idiot.
But, yeah, I don't think Tennessee is ready to compete for a national title with Georgia in 2023. Maybe they would prove me wrong, but I don't see that. But Tennessee...
I mean, I think for the purposes of this exercise, it is posing the 4 programs most likely to stand between Georgia and a third national title.
Yeah, I think that's how she's framing it, because you're citing 3 teams that are not on Georgia's schedule this year. The only way Georgia plays Ohio State is in the playoff. The only way they play Bama or LSU is in the SEC championship game or the playoff.
the way that, Joe Milton, putting that on Joe Milton is an interesting situation because, we're going to get to the evaluation of Hendon Hooker a little later on. A lot of draft analysts are struggling. A great deal of draft analysts are struggling with him, and nobody can seem to kind of pin down, or maybe it's just by nature of us having so much damn time to continue to talk about the same prospects over and over again that people keep shifting their positions on him. But honestly, it's been funny to see the variance around the Hendon Hooker analysis. But Joe Milton, going into that game in particular, even with home field advantage, Georgia's ability to take a team out of rhythm so easily is the thing that I think is the Vols kryptonite. I think Georgia's a particularly bad matchup for Tennessee, just generally. Now, again, Georgia's got to figure out their quarterback situation. There are a lot of SEC programs. We went through this, at some point last month. Lucas had a list of different SEC programs that were replacing their starting quarterback this year, obviously with Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, Will Levis going in the top in the first round in all likelihood at this point. You've got a lot of different discussions around Anthony Richardson, and you know that Georgia will have to replace Stetson Bennett. Who am I missing out of all that? Is that the list? The list of SEC programs replacing their quarterback? Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee. Who am I missing?
Yeah,
I think that's it. Those are the ones that factor in more than anything because Rattler's back at South Carolina, and that would be probably the next step.
You said Florida, yeah.
Dan, I did say Florida. LSU. Now, again, it would assume that LSU and Georgia win the East and the West in the SEC and would meet in the conference title game. LSU getting a second shot at Georgia is interesting to me because they need big plays. Now, they got them last year. They had 11 plays of at least 20 yards or more, according to ESPN stats and info. Jaden Daniels had a 95 QBR against Georgia when they were playing zone defense in the title game. But again, a 20-point margin of victory for Georgia over LSU. All 5 starters returned to LSU's offensive line, which is interesting. And that is, I think, where the matchup, the physicality of it would be first and foremost decided. It wouldn't be a 10-7 game. Heather Dinich writes, wouldn't be 14-10. You have to have explosive playmakers. And that is something that LSU is able to find. But I don't necessarily know what is the vibe around LSU right now? Understanding that they're national champions in women's basketball, what is the sense around LSU in year 2 under Brian Kelly? Because I feel like we have not discussed them at all. And we don't have a ton of reason to, but I do feel like that's still one of the most notable programs, a famous head coach who's going to have national championship aspirations. And for us to go basically from talking half the offseason about Brian Kelly to hardly any discussion at all, what's going on there?
I don't know how you can't consider them an SEC title contender.
Well, by nature of them winning the West last year, I think you have to.
Returning their quarterback, returning the majority of their top-end talent, especially on defense. Mason Smith, who got hurt in the first game against Florida State, he didn't even get to play the entire year. Harold Perkins, who at times was one of the most dominant pass rushers in the country last season, coming back. I don't know how you can look at LSU. They lose Keishon Butte, right? They lose some weapons on the outside.
He's going to be a weird draft one.
Yeah, that hasn't been talked about
at all.
And that's a guy that going into the college football season of 2022 was considered, could he be the number 1 receiver prospect in this draft? And it kind of fell flat throughout the course of the season. But yeah, I don't know what evidence you have to say, no, there's no way LSU can compete for a title in 2023. Other than, the West is a gauntlet. It's going to be a gauntlet much more so than the East. But they're 100% a contender to win the SEC.
615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion this morning. Which program do you think is most capable of knocking Georgia off in 2023? A quick reminder, we've got a cool event coming up. Steeplechase, obviously, is an incredible event here in Middle Tennessee, but we're hosting the Champions Corner at the 82nd running of the Air Course Steeplechase, presented by Bank of America, Saturday, May the 13th, Percy Warner Park. We had so much fun. It's my first year doing it. The Champions Corner setup is outstanding. With your ticket, you get food, you get booze, you get a great place to tailgate. It makes it so easy to get in and out of Percy Warner. It's presented by Bank of America, as I said, and we will have that all-inclusive Champions Corner thanks to Uncle Bud's and O'Charlie's. You can go and purchase tickets today at 1045thezone.com. Come out. It's going to be a great time, and we look forward to having you guys there. Coming up next, a former NFL executive is accusing his ownership group. maybe that's a little Freudian slip there. I'm thinking too much about Dan Snyder. Is accusing his ownership group of actively cheating in the NFL. We'll tell you what's going on with that coming up next.
Jerry Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
We got accusations of cheating in the NFL. A little TMZ for you on this Thursday. So Adam Schefter a couple of days ago reported that owner Michael Bidwell, currently the owner of the Arizona Cardinals, he's accused of gross misconduct, including cheating, discrimination, and harassment in an arbitration claim filed Tuesday by a former Cardinals exec, Terry McDonough, to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. So do you remember that Steve Keim, he's not the GM anymore, but Steve Keim was suspended for about 5 weeks. He had he pleaded guilty to not just driving under the influence, but something called extreme DUI, which I do not remember. Lucas, could you look this up for me? What defines? I don't know if Urban Dictionary has this.
No, I was reading this story on The Athletic. Which are you reading, Schefter?
I'm reading Schefter's report.
Yeah, The Athletic clarified. I believe it's just a DUI where your blood alcohol content is above a certain mark.
So far and above. Okay, so above, not the point, what is it, 0.08?
Yeah, I think it's like 0.15. If it's 0.15 or higher, it's extreme.
So basically doubling up the legal limit is what we are considering extreme DUI. Sounds unpleasant. So Steve Keim was suspended for about 5 weeks, which means no communication with the club. You're not around the facilities. You're not in contact with the players, the coaches, et cetera, et cetera. So this executive, Terry McDonough, is saying that he and the head coach, Steve Wilkes, at the time, had no choice but to follow Michael Bidwell's plan to use burner phones to communicate with former Arizona general manager Steve Keim while Keim was suspended for a period of 5 weeks. Now, the Cardinals have denied these allegations, calling them outlandish. We are reluctantly obliged to provide a public response along with broader context for some disappointing and irresponsible actions by Terry McDonough, according to a PR statement. Claims he has made in an arbitration filing are wildly false, reckless, and an opportunistic ploy for financial gain. I mean, would it surprise anybody if an NFL owner said, hey, I want to still talk to my GM for a period of 5 weeks while he's suspended with extreme DUI, get a burner phone?
And this was in a pretty critical point in the year. It's preseason.
Was it?
The arrest happened in July. So he's suspended throughout the course of the preseason when you're talking about making roster cuts and shaping your 53-man roster for the 2023 season.
He was suspended during a critical period of the Cardinals training camp in the summer of 2018.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bidwell's like, I need to be able to talk to my GM to decide who's going to be on this football team this year. Everybody get a burner phone.
Neither McDonough nor Wilkes wanted to communicate with Keim during the suspension. Bidwell summoned them to his office and wrote them up for insubordination for not communicating with the GM. This is funny, man.
It's a crazy story. Anytime burner phones are involved in an NFL scandal, you have my attention.
No, but see, this is getting more attention than that Tom Brady, Sean Payton Dolphins story. And it pisses me off. That was like, we are dying for conspiracy theories to be real in the world of sports.
Yeah, and that was an actual one.
That was an actual conspiracy theory that the NFL said, yeah, it happened. That's why we're taking away draft picks and giving Stephen Ross, that dopey bleep, a $10 million fine because he's out here tampering actively and potentially giving out $100,000 tanking handshakes to Brian Flores when he loses games.
But that doesn't have as much juice because it's something that...
Well, what?
It's something that almost happened, right? Like it's something that...
Not something that did happen.
Was in the works and that obviously did not transpire.
I think that's crazier.
I agree. It is a fascinating story that Tom Brady... What was it? Wanted to be like a player.
He wanted to be a part owner of the team.
A player/part owner.
And at some point, there was a stipulation that would allow his Buccaneers contract to expire, which would then allow him to be part owner and quarterback of the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
With Sean Payton as his head coach, while Stephen Ross takes them out on yachts and tampers with them actively. And all because Brian Flores' lawsuit blew this thing up in the middle of it. Because the Dolphins are kind of a poorly run organization, and turns out they're bad at both of these things. Yeah, the whole Ponzi scheme to get Brady and Peyton to Miami got nuked because there's a racist lawsuit sitting in the middle of this, like a poison pill in the middle of your business deal. And it sounds like based on the last update I saw on the Brian Flores lawsuit, that he was gaining some traction. So not ideal for Miami. But either way, so Bidwell also subjected McDonough, according to the arbitration claim, to bullying, mocking, harassing, and abusive behavior.
The Athletic reports that McDonough's complaint says he does have audio recordings of conversations that he had with Steve Keim during the suspension, and he still has the burner phone.
So he's got the burner phone, he's got the tapes, and he said, no, bleep you, financial gain. I'm going to get my money, and you're going to get got. I don't know I assume there's going to be some loss of draft picks. If this is found out to be so, of course, obviously this has to be worked through a particular process. Oh, this is interesting. So McDonough, the executive, son of legendary Boston Globe reporter Will McDonough and brother of ESPN broadcaster Sean McDonough.
No way. I did not know that.
So I think this McDonough also at some point worked for the Phoenix Suns in their front office in some capacity. Because I remember reading a story about the McDonough brothers and their dad a couple of years ago. I think it was whenever Sean McDonough was Monday Night Football for, how long did he last? A season? Maybe 2 seasons with McDonough and Gruden in the booth? Either way. So it would surprise me none, just kind of out here without any reported facts beyond what's in this arbitration situation. It would surprise me none to know that an ownership group was bullying, harassing, and demeaning in some form or fashion their employees to try and get their way. Because somebody's messing with their toy. They don't like not being able to talk to their GM for 5 weeks for extreme DUI. And instead of trying to figure it out on their own during training camp, they said, no, burners.
Yeah. So McDonough and Wilkes are concerned about this because they're saying we're not supposed to be talking to our general manager, but our boss is making us do it through nefarious means with a burner phone. And then when they object to it, the owner, Bidwell, their boss, calls them out for insubordination.
Can you imagine being Steve Wilkes that year, knowing that you're just a dead man walking? Because that I think is the biggest case, because Steve Wilkes is a part of that Brian Flores lawsuit.
Yes.
Steve Wilkes probably has more ammunition than he is laying on the table publicly.
49ers defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes.
And former Carolina Panthers interim head coach as of last season was Steve Wilkes. So I'm fascinated to see. It seems, ownership in the NFL is so rarely held accountable, and they're not covered because, 1, they don't have to speak. 2, they own a league network in the NFL network, and they can dictate coverage as they please. And 3, we don't seem to have sports business reporters in the football world that, and I don't want to be critical of anybody that I'm leaving out, but there seems to be a lack of true reporting around the actual business at the highest levels of the NFL and professional sport. Like, I feel like those things are done. I mean, every once in a while you'll have a, who's the Pulitzer Prize winning reporter for ESPN? Don Van Natta. Don Van Natta every once in a while comes out with a Jerry Jones story because Jerry likes to drink Johnny Walker Blue and talk to people in his office.
Jerry Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
I heard it's the first time I've heard one of the show promos. He turned that into a show promo. He's the worst. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. A former NFL MVP is offering to be a Titans backup quarterback and apparently a backup quarterback for many other teams. We'll tell you what Cam Newton had to say about the Titans coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. A Seymour Putters Masters update on day one of the Masters in Augusta. Victor Hovland leads the way, 5 under through 9 holes. On his tail, Jon Rahm, 2 strokes back at 3 under through 8 holes. Tiger Woods remains 2 over through 10 holes. Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill announced that he will retire from the NFL when his contract is up with the Miami Dolphins in an appearance on 810 WHB in Kansas City. That will be after the 2025 NFL season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour underway. We're happy to have you here, whether you're just now jumping on or whether you've been kicking it with us for the past 2 hours. 615-737-1045. Join the discussion however you choose to, whether that's via the phones or on Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch is where we're live streaming as well. So there is a circumstance in the NFL that has caught a bit of headlines. And anytime a former NFL MVP speaks, people tend to listen, even if that MVP is considerably past his prime and currently out of the league right now. Now, he also happens to only be about 33 years old. He's a different kind of 33. Cam Newton is in the process of reconsidering his NFL future. So I don't know, Lucas, is this his podcast?
I'm not sure. I think so because the background is a wall with a bunch of illegible words that use the font that Cam Newton always uses on his social media posts. So, yeah, I've got to think this is some sort of show that Cam Newton hosts.
I don't understand why he still feels the need to take this much time to type his own language out. I mean, it's not his own language. He's doing it in English, but, like, the characters are so absurd. Anyway, so it would appear to be Cam Newton's podcast. And he's recently spoken about players that he would be willing to back up. Now, we know that he appeared at Auburn's Pro Day and wanted to throw a little bit at Auburn's Pro Day. The results were mixed, understandably so. When we last saw Cam Newton, accuracy was the biggest struggle, and accuracy continues to be the biggest issue for him at this stage of his career. He's not currently in the NFL, but is trying to get back in, and one would think that there's still a function for Cam, but how much of that function remains is yet to be determined. So he's asked about this specific, or he's not asked about this, he just brings it up. He's talking about refocusing his NFL career because for the longest, Cam wasn't content to be a backup. Well, now that he's no longer really capable of even latching on as a backup, he's decided to at least voice his opinion on who he might be willing to back up should an NFL team call him. This is Cam Newton on his podcast.
I know a lot of people have a lot of things to say in regards to my future in the NFL. And I wanted to set the record straight by saying, this is how I feel. There ain't 32 guys that's better than me. But I also know that I could also be a backup. And I'm willing to be a backup. Players that I will back up. Number one, I'll back up Deshaun Watson. It goes without saying, me and Deshaun Watson's relationship, he was on my 707 All-Star team. I've grown to admire the person, the athlete that he is, going through a lot of turmoil, but I believe that's behind him. My number 2 person would be wherever Lamar Jackson decides to go. Number 3 will be Justin Fields, another C1N product. Number 4 will be Tua Tagovailoa. Number 5 will be Malik Willis, another C1N All-Star representative. And I would say there's 3 rookie quarterbacks that I would love or enjoy to groom. Any of these rookie quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson. Any one of those guys, I would be happy to back those guys up. Who we got? Number 7, Jalen Hurts. Number 8 would be Aaron Rodgers. Number 9 would be Josh Allen. And number 10 would be Sam Howell, another C1N alumni. But when you think about the list, it's really to the point. Now, some of those guys may already have penciled in backups that the franchise is probably okay with, and that's fine. I'm just voicing my opinion, and I'm just getting the narrative out.
Okay. That is certainly a collection of players. Now, 7 of those dudes make sense. I don't love starting off the list with Deshaun Watson, noted pervert, and listing all his admirable qualities as why that would make the most sense, other than you like his skill set as a player. But spare me the glowing reviews of Deshaun Watson, the human being. I'm all set, thanks. But Watson, Lamar, Justin Fields, Tua, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, and Josh Allen. Okay, those all make sense. Those are arguably 7 of the best players at their position. Those are players, I would take Justin Fields out of that as far as contenders, but I think Dolphins, Eagles, Packers, or Jets with Rodgers, Bills, Ravens with Lamar, and Browns. I think you could consider all of those teams contending or competing for a playoff position. We'll see what Chicago does this year. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. Okay, I get the willingness to lend yourself to that, although I think Will Levis has some qualities that could be mentored by Cam Newton if he so chose to go down that route. And then he listed 2 other guys. Sam Howell, who I guess is the Commander's starting quarterback right now, and Malik Willis. Malik Willis, the 5th quarterback he named off the board.
I mean, at some point, he's just listing guys that he knows and likes.
That is what this list would seem to consist of. So either Cam has no idea how badly Malik Willis performed on the field of play. He has no idea that Ryan Tannehill's still here. He doesn't care about Ryan Tannehill still being here, which would be funny. But the Willis thing in there is kind of interesting. So he brings up C1N football camps. It's Cam Newton's football camp, right? So Howell and Willis both participated in Newton's C1N football camps and tournaments at some point coming up, as did 2 of the 3 rookies that he listed there. I mean, I think the Titans are a team that could find a usefulness for Cam as long as it didn't involve throwing the football. But Cam listing Malik Willis as the 5th quarterback on that list of players that he would be willing to submit himself to back up is, one, pretty ironic when you consider the assessment of Cam Newton's play and Malik Willis's play. So maybe that's some unintentional messaging that Cam is putting out there. Also, maybe Cam thinks that he could beat Malik Willis out for a job, because I would argue that Cam, I think in certain circumstances, would still give you a better opportunity to win a football game than Malik Willis at this stage of his young career. But yeah, Cam Newton, and I understand, like, he's a former NFL MVP. He's a former national championship winning quarterback in college. Turns out he's having a tough time coming to terms with his football career mortality. Now, I think Cam could do whatever he wants to do. I think Cam could go into fashion. I think Cam can go into entertainment. I think Cam could do all of those things. Podcast with the way that people are interested in hearing directly from athletes now as a source, as opposed to going through media as a middleman. I think Cam can do whatever he wants to, other than play football at this stage of his career, or at least play NFL football at this stage of his career. But just the idea that he's sitting in a room, that he's painted with all of his weird, what would we even call them? Weird numerals? Weird lettering? Whatever it is, sitting in a dark room. I want you to start playing that kind of elevator music behind everything that I say. Cam Newton has a running soundtrack. I would like one of those too, please. What would mine sound like? Do we have anything? Anything available? No, I hate this.
That's what you get. Take it or leave it.
No, is that all we can afford in the music, or the royalty-free music?
Yeah, nobody would take anything you say seriously.
Well, that would imply that they take anything that I say seriously now.
Right. Fitting. So here's what I'm hearing about the 11th pick.
This would be very, very difficult for me to deliver serious sports takes and dialogue as a part of the discussion with this. How would we even describe this? Is this like jazz hands? What is this in the background?
It's the most generic game show music possible.
Is that what it's called? Just generic game show music 1? That is the soundtrack to my life. Generic game show music 1. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. NFL draft analysts can't figure out Hendon Hooker. We're going to tell you why coming up next. We're going to get into some things that Mel Kiper had to say about Vols quarterback Hendon Hooker in the draft analysis. And why trying to figure out the Tennessee quarterback has everybody kind of in a spin. First to the phone, 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion, because I do think the quarterback talk matters a great deal here. And the more that I think about it, the more time that I spend with it, the more that I look at these guys and watch them and talk about them with various people around the league, the more that I feel like the Titans absolutely need to have some kind of hand in this year's quarterback draft. And I'm not just talking about a backup for Tannehill. But we'll get to that in a second. Jay calling us from Donaldson up first. Hey, Jay.
Okay, Buck, I was on my way to get some lunch, and I had to pull over because I could not believe my ears. So did this man say he wanted to be the third-string quarterback in Tennessee behind Tannehill and Malik Willis?
This man being Cam Newton, for the audience who didn't hear the audio we played last segment.
Guys.
No, that's okay. Yes, well, either he doesn't know that Ryan Tannehill is still here, or he thinks that Malik Willis is better than Ryan Tannehill. I don't know necessarily how to take that, Jay.
I mean, he's just listing guys that he likes. I think that's all that is.
Jay, what is your assessment? Do you think Cam Newton would like to be the third-string quarterback here in Tennessee?
Yes, a close personal friend of all these people that he's mentioned. Listen, Cam, you're a big, good-looking dude. I've got Boban Marjanovic and Russell Westbrook on commercials. You're a good-looking dude. You're big. You're talented. It's over, buddy. You've had a great run. Please, for the love of God, do not mention these people's names that you will back up behind when it is ridiculous. Sam Howell, doesn't he play for the Celtics? I'm not sure who this guy is. So please, Cam, go do some commercials. Take care of your family. Please hang cleats up.
It seems like a plea. Jay is desperate for Cam to not play football anymore.
Cam would be good at commercials.
Cam was good at commercials. Didn't he have something happen? Because he had that big Oikos yogurt deal, right? Didn't he get in some trouble? Cam said something that I don't think was.
Yeah, it was. I believe I might be wrong about this.
No. Let me look at, because I don't want to accuse Cam.
No,
Newton
but
of
he
doing
did.
Something.
He was in. I was saying I might be wrong about the reporter. Maybe Jordan Rodrigue, the NFL reporter, was covering the Panthers at the time, and she was asking him about.
That's right.
I can't remember what receiver she was asking him about as far as the route tree, and he said it's funny to hear females talk about routes
because he was all over television with those Dan and Oikos, the yogurt commercials.
I think that's what lost him that.
So this is an article from CNN Money. Oikos yogurt distancing itself from Cam Newton 2017 after his sexist remark to a woman sports writer. The brand said it was shocked and disheartened by the Carolina Panthers quarterback behavior and would no longer run advertisements with him. He had been a spokesman for the brand for about 3 years. So he was asked about passing routes at a press conference. Before answering, he paused and said, "It's funny to hear a female talk about routes." That's right. So I don't know if his endorsement deals are still active after that, because at the time he had Under Armour, Gatorade, and Beats by Dre. And obviously Cam Newton as a starting quarterback is not necessarily relevant for any of these brands at this point. But I do think that the commentary made towards Jordan Rodrigue, who, by the way, has gone on to be an absolutely kick-ass NFL reporter. She's the Rams beat writer for The Athletic right now, and the work she does, the writing she does is exceptional. She's really gone on to thrive, because at the time I think she was with the Charlotte Observer, and she's since moved up to a national platform, so good for Jordan. Sue Ann, it's been so long. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay. So the off season is the worst part of the football season. In my opinion, it's just so much sad thing, a lot of sad. But I had to call in because it's hilarious to me that Cam Newton thinks that he's the gift to every football team in the NFL, right? So this is what came to mind for me is in Tombstone, when Doc Holliday is chasing down Johnny Ringo and he looks at him and says, I'm your Huckleberry. So I guess that Cam Newton thinks he's everybody's Huckleberry. But I don't think the Titans want Cam Newton to be our Huckleberry. But I could be wrong.
I love that as a reference.
The tombstone quote.
Thank you for the call, Sue-Ann.
Awesome.
That's a movie I've seen. That's a reference I get. Hell yeah, Sue-Ann. Nailed it. I want that as a drop. I'm your Huckleberry. No, Cam Newton is nobody's Huckleberry at this point. I mean, but think about it. Cam Newton's entire life has been God's gift to football. His entire existence. And all of a sudden it's just done.
It's hard to come off that mountain, man.
I can't even begin to imagine changing your state of mind so drastically when you've had the existence that Cam Newton has had. Cam Newton played in a Super Bowl. Cam Newton is a league MVP. He's a national championship winning quarterback, and now all of a sudden he's done, he's dusted, and yes, he might be. He probably is. But to have to like mentally grapple with that cannot be an easy thing to do. I almost forgive Cam. I think I do forgive Cam the sense of entitlement because he's been this his entire existence.
Well,
he's so young still.
He's had to be humbled before in his young career. Do you remember the incident at Florida? Cam
With the
Newton's
laptop?
Yeah, he's a 5-star prospect, super highly recruited. He gets to Florida like 2007 when they're at the top of college football. He's behind Tim Tebow. I think he's there when Chris Leak is there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets kicked off the team, has to go down to junior college, wins the JUCO national championship, comes to Auburn, and then from there the ascension was just unstoppable. Like Bruce Feldman said to us the other day, he might be the best college football player he has ever seen. Cam Newton.
Oh, well, it means more coming from Bruce than it does for me, but I don't think there's any question in my lifetime Cam Newton's the best college football player I've ever seen.
That Auburn team had no business playing for a national championship. None.
I don't think Tebow, even though Tebow was a huge phenomenon, and obviously the religious component with Tebow I think carries a lot of weight, and rightfully so. He was a galvanizing figure for a lot of people.
That team was stacked with NFL players.
Exactly right. I think Cam Newton is the best college football player, the most single-handedly dominant college football player I've ever seen in my life.
Name me one player from that Auburn offense.
Ooh.
I can name a couple.
The only player from that team I could name is Nick Fairley, the defensive tackle.
Who didn't really pan out.
No, he was a first-round pick. I can't remember by who, but he did not last very long. He ended up having like a decent second stint somewhere.
He was the only other player on that. Now, Philip Lutzenkirchen, who passed away, would have been a tight end in the NFL on that Auburn team. But, yeah, I mean, that team had no business playing for a national championship.
Darren Bates on that team. Defensive players were good.
Yeah.
Yeah, DB's got a ring. I've talked to Bates in a while.
Was Bates on that team?
Yeah, Bates on the national championship winning team. Bates, because he famously had a very, very public dust-up with Gene Chizik in a moment that I don't think Gene Chizik remembers very fondly, and I don't think Bates does either. Bates should get Cam on the Raw Room. I'm sure they still talk. Bob in Nashville next. Hey, Bob.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
I need one good reason why Malik Willis is still on the Titans roster. Just one.
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's not a bad thing to have him on the roster right now. What are you advocating for?
He's worthless.
Okay, well, beyond that, would you just like to, you just want to exist with one quarterback? You don't even want to give him training camp?
Do you think it'll help?
I don't know. I have no idea. I know that last year was very, very poor. I mean, Bob, what do you want him to, realistically, he's 1 year in. It was really, really bad. Everybody saw it. But do you not even give the guy training camp? I think that's a bit unfair, yes?
He was a wasted draft pick. Totally wasted.
Well, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I don't think he was a waste. He just didn't work. Like a third-round pick, a third-round pick at quarterback is not a waste. It's a flyer. It's maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't.
And nobody expected him to be there in the third round.
Well, football people apparently did. Now, not as late in the third round, because remember they traded up. But like he wasn't even...
Don't pretend like we weren't shocked that Malik Willis was available at the 86th
No.
pick.
We were. But again, the discussion that we have is different than the ones that football people have, right?
Yes, but those
People
are the
at the
discussions
Senior
we're a part of, so those are discussions that we can cite.
I struggle. Okay, you are correct. We were a part of those discussions. We all were wowed by Malik Willis's arm at the Senior Bowl and the fact that he was the only one that looked like he had a pulse out there among the quarterbacks that participated, which also featured Pickett and Ritter. But a third-round pick on a quarterback and one that you got late third round, like, it's fine. It's totally fine. Now, if you want to manufacture a situation where he's this failed future of the franchise, that's on you, man. Like, Bob, the fact that he couldn't play, that is a different discussion. It still doesn't make him a waste. It makes him a chance that's worth taking. And frankly, I think the experiment is probably over. And if he lasts through training camp this year, it will because he has had to have made a substantial leap. And if he does not, then I wish him the best in his future NFL career. But like to call it a waste is just completely misguided based on the amount of draft capital that is associated with the quarterback position and the fact that it just doesn't matter if you take a quarterback that late and he doesn't necessarily give you the things that he wants. Would you like for him to be a functional backup? Yes, he is not. Or at least he wasn't when last we saw him. Can he at least have training camp to get it right? Absolutely.
Yeah, it would make no sense to cut him. There'd be no logic to that.
No, but if he can't get better, they damn sure better have a plan. I mean, damn sure. Like that, I think will be, and it's too late to, talk about indictments of anything. But if they do not have a better plan beyond Malik Willis, taking some miraculous step forward, then they have been negligent in their approach at the most important position. Because I continue to think that letting go of Josh Dobbs as a functional backup quarterback was a mistake.
Maybe it ends up being Hendon Hooker.
It could be. It could very well be. I'm just saying, you got to have a plan beyond Malik because Malik is not feasible right now. Speaking of Hendon Hooker, which is a nice way that Lucas is trying to elbow me to move on to the next topic, Hendon Hooker is a bit of a mystery to draft analysts right now as to where specifically to place him. Now, ultimately, it will not matter where Mel Kiper or Todd McShay, Daniel Jeremiah, any of the draft Knicks names that you know. It doesn't matter where he's placed by them. It matters how an NFL organization views him. But right now, Hendon Hooker is getting smoke from one of the most famous draft analysts out there. So Kiper's not a fan. And he's not a fan of either quarterbacks, Hendon Hooker or Joe Milton, because of Tennessee's offensive system, which was the explanation that he offered as to why Hooker has not been ranked very highly on his various big boards that have come out. I think when you look at the quarterback-friendly offense at Tennessee, and what I mean by quarterback-friendly, he had excellent wide receivers. He took the snap in the shotgun, immediately hot-stepped and threw the football, got it right out of his hands in a fast fashion to three outstanding wide receivers. What also bothers me, Joe Milton came in when Hooker was hurt, and in that bowl game against Clemson, without Cedric Tillman, without Jalen Hyatt, without two top receivers, he lit up the Clemson Tigers defense. So that Josh Heupel quarterback-friendly offense made it possible for these numbers to be through the roof. His touchdown-to-interception ratio, 69% completion percentage, tons of yards, et cetera, et cetera. So Mel Kiper is saying, yeah, I'm not impressed. And, again, producing in college football is what you're asked to do. You can also, in the same way, so like I'll take a defensive example of this. Will McDonald, the edge rusher at Iowa State. He's damn near a defensive lineman in the system that Iowa State runs. They run that 3-3 defensive system that we saw TCU use to futility against Georgia. He's not going to be a defensive end in the NFL. It's just simply not how he's going to be used. A lot of times there are prospects out there for whatever reason where you have to remove them almost from the system that they're playing in. Now, I don't think you can do that with Tennessee, especially not on offense. I will acknowledge that, I mean, basically, and I don't mean to dismiss it outright, But I was talking to James Foster, who runs the A to Z Sports Film Room account, and I asked, or we put it out on Twitter, what's the biggest reason why people are struggling to hit or figure out Vols quarterback Hendon Hooker? And his assessment was, they're running 7 plays. They're running 7 plays in that offense, basically, that lead to a variety of different explosive plays with the same cast of rotating wide receivers. And when they run those plays with Hendon Hooker, they're more successful. When they run with them with Joe Milton, they have some degree of success that Milton is able to operate effectively. But he's either first read and throw or handing the football off within the system and within a system that does not get very expansive, both in terms of personnel and in terms of concept. Again, it's hugely successful, but you do grade him on a curve that way. I think to be down on him as a prospect because of the system that he played, if he didn't succeed in the system, then I'd have bigger issues. But he was executing at a high level, as high a level as any quarterback in the sport for a period of time. We're talking about the guy who was the face of college football last year for the vast majority of the season until the ACL tear. So the analysis has been a struggle, but also I don't think it should be used very much to his detriment. Just because Mel Kiper's not terribly high on him doesn't mean that he won't still be a first-round draft pick or that he won't be a high day 2 pick.
Well, it also remembers Hendon Hooker's career at Tennessee very selectively.
Very much so.
Because how did Tennessee's offense take off under Josh Heupel?
Well, they put Hendon Hooker in the lineup because of injury due to Joe Milton.
Right. And then the offense went from, and it was a 1.5 game sample size.
Yeah,
but
he didn't get enough.
The offense wasn't quite getting off the ground. It was a little bit erratic, inconsistent.
And the one game was Ball State.
Obviously, the overthrows, yeah. And then it was a half against Pitt where, Tennessee left like 3 touchdowns on the table in the first half that were running wide open. And then the second Hooker steps in. It's a record-breaking offense in year 1 under Josh Heupel.
But it also remembers that sample size selectively. Because Hendon Hooker, prior to Tennessee, was what? I mean, he's bouncing around. He's at Virginia Tech. He's in the transfer portal.
Dual threat.
Didn't win the job.
Yeah. He was a guy with a big arm that could make plays with his legs.
And now I think this is something that gets lost in the shuffle. They went with the player that they thought was the best player at the position. They started that season with Joe Milton. And when they figured out that Joe Milton didn't work and they had their hand forced a little bit, they put in Hendon Hooker, and you saw the fruits of that come to bear. But I do think there's a variety of different factors that make the Hendon Hooker evaluation more difficult than the other 4 that we consistently talk about. And it's the sample size beyond Tennessee, it's the sample size of Tennessee, and it's the fact that what he is going to run, what he ran in college, it doesn't really hold a candle to what he'll be asked to operate in the pros. Can they find portions of that system to work in the pros? Yes, but it's not like you're gonna run the Josh Heupel offense in the NFL. You can find some ways to integrate it and make the player more successful, whether that's Hyatt, whether that's Tillman, Hooker, or whomever Tennessee draftee that you might name. But I get why Mel's struggling with it. I get why a lot of people are struggling with it. And also I think it does a disservice. Both things can be so. I think it does a disservice to who Hendon Hooker is and how hard he's worked to achieve at this level. Because there's no question he's appreciably better, even if the system does a great deal to help him. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. We will update the polls, and we will wrap it up on this Thursday coming up next. Wrapping up on this Thursday, 3HL going to be out at Bold Patriot Brewing later this afternoon. I know Lucas and I are going to stop by, so it sounds like there's a bit of a party going on out there. I think they're doing their whole show out there. Well, I assume they do the whole show. It's not like they're going to pick up and move in the middle of the show. That was a dumb
they're
thing
just
to
doing
say.
half. Yeah, the second break of hour 2, they're going to pack it up and go, go, go.
We should do that to Kirby one time. We should act like there's a memo or an email that he missed and be like, okay, Kirby, we have to move this entire setup outside in the next 5 minutes.
Sorry, Kirby. They said they want the first half here and the second half here.
I'm looking at it. We should fake an email, and it's not like anybody's listening to this right now. We can figure out a way to. That seems cruel. Kirby just wants to enjoy his cigarette break. He's out there 16 hours before anybody goes on the air trying to set everything up very, very specifically and in the right order. We also have an update on the Cam Newton commercial proposition. V-Love has tweeted me, Oikos then made noted respecter of women Deshaun Watson their next spokesperson after they dropped Cam. So they dropped the sexist and they picked up a pervert.
The shoe fits.
Tough. Poor yogurt company can't get off the mat. I mean, listen, none of us knew about Deshaun until we all very, very much knew.
That's
objectively hilarious.
That is crazy.
That's pretty bad.
To go 0 for 2 like that. Oh no.
You fire Cam for being a sexist at the podium, and then you pick up the pervert.
Oh, that's their marketing manager. Someone comes in and shuts the door behind the office. Okay, we got news.
I mean, so
it happened again.
It happened again.
Are you kidding me? He looked so clean.
What do you mean the team gave him an NDA? We shouldn't be laughing about this. A very serious story that we're making light of. But obviously, oh my God, somebody has to get fired, right? Somebody has to get fired. Even if it's not your fault that you didn't know that Deshaun Watson was just, a raging problem behind the scenes with towels and sexual harassment and massage therapy and all these different things.
So who's who do they turn to next, or are they just taking a break
I think
from
they
that?
just shut it down.
No more NFL players for a while.
That's enough. That's enough for a little while. I honestly can't think of the last time Oikos has got more run on this radio show today than they have on television since 2017. Crazy.
They had John Stamos for a bit.
That seems safer.
So they went the actors route. They had
although noted ladies man, you got to be careful.
Yeah,
you don't know what's going on.
Got to be careful. I believe they had Dion. Yeah, in February, a new commercial with Dion and his son.
Oh, really?
Shadur. Yeah, and then at one point,
NIL money.
A couple years ago, Saquon had a partnership with them.
Okay, keep taking swings, I guess, if you're Oikos. Do we need a Preds update? They didn't play last night, but the Calgary Flames beat the Jets in ways that are substantial. Preds play tonight?
Tonight correct? At home. They got the Hurricanes.
And these are must-win games for them down the stretch.
Regular season's over by the end of next week for the Preds.
A big loss a meaningful loss for both the Jets and the Preds, who are trying to claw their way, no pun intended, back into that wild card spot, that final wild card spot.
Problem with that is Calgary is that third team clawing its way into
Calgary
the final
getting
wild
a
card
win
spot.
is not ideal.
Yeah, so Calgary and Winnipeg are now tied on points for that second spot in the West, and the Preds are 3 points back with 86. So the Preds are currently, they're not that first team out. They're the second team out right now behind Calgary.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on what happens with that tonight, and we'll see if the Preds can't get a little closer to the postseason for the 9th consecutive year. It's going to be weird if they don't make the playoffs. I don't know what the hell we're going to do. I mean,
in a while.
It's my entire existence down here. Every year, the hockey team has been in the postseason, even if they kind of peter out.
They've got a bunch of AHL players just dragging this team, kicking and screaming, seeing if they can get to the finish line.
And they're not doing the worst job. They're keeping it afloat. All right, let's do some polls.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They sell any non-specialty new Ford below MSRP. How many NFL teams could be in the market for a quarterback in the first round? Joey says 5.
Yeah. I think more than 5. I think 5 is probably bare minimum. I mean, if you name the teams right now who need a quarterback in the first round, just go down the list. Carolina, Houston, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Seattle could not. I mean, it wouldn't hurt at 5th overall. Tennessee could use a quarterback. I could keep going on and on down the list with teams that are just kind of stopgapping this thing with veterans that could do with a cost-effective rookie solution.
I mean, you could do it 2 ways. You can do it, one being, yeah, I think this team could use a quarterback. Yeah, this team could use a quarterback. Or you could do it saying, okay, we have concrete evidence that this team could be in the market for a quarterback. Then the list gets much smaller.
Yeah, I think it's probably, if you do it the latter way, it's probably 6. If you do it our way, it's probably closer to 13 to 15, like Lucas mentioned earlier.
Is Cam Newton good enough to be an NFL backup? 66% say yes.
I don't know what evidence there is of that lately.
Oh, what? There's not worse backups in the NFL than Cam Newton?
From a quarterback perspective, I mean, unless Cam's just going to run it on every down. Do you remember watching him at the end with Carolina? Not even the Patriots stint, the second Carolina stint.
Would you rather have, and maybe this is unfair because this guy was pretty much a very last-ditch option for this team, but would you rather have Cam Newton or Josh Johnson as your backup?
Ooh. Cam. But I say that very, very begrudgingly. I don't like anything about the Cam Newton experience right now.
What is the biggest reason that NFL draft analysts cannot figure out Hendon Hooker? James Foster of A to Z Sports says because Tennessee ran 7 plays all season.
I honestly think that's a big part of it. There's really not a sample size of him doing much of what he's going to be asked to do at the next level. So I think people look at that. Then you're asking them to scout quarterback traits, of which I think a lot of people in media may not necessarily be equipped to do.
Will says he's old, basically a pro playing in college, and he is hurt.
Yeah, but it's not as big a factor. The age thing does matter. Age thing does.
Mike Herndon chimes in, says the Tennessee offense gave him incredibly easy reads, resembles nothing close to an NFL-style offense, and he didn't break out until he was almost 24. I have no idea how you feel confident projecting him.
Boom.
And then you see all the replies, and you just know people are just attacking Mike Herndon.
Well, and Mike is out there responding to each of these attacks like a sociopath. Mike, put the phone down.
Who is your pick to win the Masters? Calvin says Rory.
Rory would be fun. Rory would be a first-timer. I don't know if Scotty Scheffler's going to be able to repeat. Tiger seems like a long shot. Who's in the lead right now?
Oh, I'd have to pull up the leaderboard. Last I saw it was still Victor Hovland, and yes, he is 7 under through 13. Shane Lowry, Xander Schauffele, John Rahm, Cam Young, Brooks Koepka, all at 3 under, tied for second.
I want any of the live golfers to win. I don't care who it is, just because I want an awkward moment when they put the jacket on them at the end.
What is the most appealing food item on the menu at the Masters? Jay says all of them. It's so cheap, you can order one of everything.
Yes. Yes is the answer.
Jimmy says the egg salad sandwich. Kenneth says the Georgia peach ice cream sandwich. I'm going to go with the pimento cheese sandwich.
None of us have sampled any of these things because we have not been invited to Augusta. Maybe you have, but we have not. Those the polls?
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That'll do it for us this afternoon. I've got a live episode of the 615 Sessions with Ramon Foster, here in about a half hour, and we'll do one more prime time tonight. So if I don't catch you there, we'll get started at 10 a.m. tomorrow with Coach Mack and a discussion on one position of need Titans fans are not talking nearly enough about. See you guys.